So on to the Investitures and Fellowships, and a short word to remind you again about the investitures, the first of which were held in 1983, and why we believe they are so important. Investitures respect the traditions of the past which underpin our profession. Appointed members are honored to respect their chosen historical and spiritual mentor, whom they consider to have influenced and inspired their career. From the 30th anniversary in 2010, invested academicians are now awarded the Fellowship of the Academy and are known as Friends. Now, I have great pleasure in announcing the academicians who are to be invested today. Ladies and gentlemen, I have great pleasure in announcing Gary Hunter. Gary is currently Deputy Executive Principal for the Capital City College Group, of which Westminster Kingsway College is part of. Gary has been at the college for over 25 years within the Culinary Arts and Hospitality School, and has been instrumental in developing the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts apprenticeship program at Westminster Kingsway. Since 2012, we've had nearly 50 students graduate from this program, and the relationship continues to grow. Most recently, we've been working with the Prince's Trust to offer this fantastic opportunity to more young people. Away from the college, Gary is also a chocolate ambassador for Barry Callebaut, which he has been for over 15 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Hunter on Iwan Kriens.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you for the honour of this fellowship and the investiture for Iwan Kriens. Iwan Kriens was the first headmaster for the UK's first professional hotel and culinary school based in London. And in doing so, he helped to change the professional and social culture in Britain. During the First World War, this remarkable Dutchman also taught the British public how to survive with strict national rationing and a scarcity of ingredients, and producing nutritious alternative recipes with a minimum of wastage. Now, academicians might turn their nose up at some of his creations around at this time. He created meat dishes without meat, sausage rolls without sausage, and baked potatoes without using a single potato. In the first decades of the 20th century, Iwan Kriens was considered a culinary authority in England, and in the war years, he gained national acclaim for explaining to the public during mass cooking demonstrations how to survive with these scarcely available foods. Iwan Kriens was born in The Hague in 1871, and he knew from an early age that he wanted to be a chef. It was a profession that had no professional training at that time, and it was also a profession you learned in practice. In 1886, Iwan left his family home to become a cook and started at the Grand Hotel Cummins in Rotterdam. He then worked in luxury hotels and restaurants in Paris, Algiers, Dieppe, and Amsterdam before moving to London in 1896, where his experience quickly gained him a role as chef at the Criterion restaurant before going to the Inns of the Court Hotel and the Howard Hotel. By then, he had built a good reputation in London and began playing a significant role in London's culinary community. At the turn of the century, the London culinary scene was dominated by Europeans. French chefs ran the kitchens and German waiters served as guests. However, as long as there was no opportunity for the British to develop into chefs at home, England especially remained dependent on European imports in terms of gastronomy. A London businessman and a local councillor, Isidore Salmon, saw that this situation needed to change, so that cookery education was taught for young people. Isidore Salmon was the vice chairman of the Universal Cookery and Food Association. The main goal of this association was to promote the culinary arts and the importance of good nutrition. The latter was badly needed because although cooking classes were a compulsory subject In girls' schools since 1882, it took until 1892 for boys to have access to cooking classes. Not to cook for the household, though, but to earn a living from it. And Baroness Angela Burdett Coutts, the very wealthy wife of the then chairman of the UCFA, ensured that boys could be taught cooking at various places in the borough of Westminster. In 1906, the UCFA decided to open its own school, and Iwan Kriens became the supervisor of the school on behalf of the UCFA, which set itself the goal of teaching haute cuisine. The school was a great success, and in 1907, the UCFA asked the London County Council to take over the school and provide funding. Interest in the training was high, but the building was too small and the operating costs became far too much for an organisation consisting mainly of volunteers. The council agreed and made the building of Westminster Technical Institute, now Westminster Kingsway College, at 76 Vincent Square available. The Culinary School, which opened its doors here on the 2nd of September 1910, was renamed the London County Council Cookery Technical School. Iwan Kriens was appointed the head teacher of this hotel and restaurant school, and it was the first government-funded professional cookery school for boys and girls, unique in its kind. Until the 1940s, it was the only professional cookery school in Britain, and we still run the 3-year professional chef's diploma to this day. At the start of the 3-year training, a minimum age of 14 years and a maximum age of 16 were applied. The students received a professional cookery training from teachers who had earned their stripes in London's finest kitchens and from general educationists. Only 15 pupils were admitted each year, and from the outset, the school had its own restaurant where the students prepared and served lunch and dinner daily for paying guests. In the 3rd year of study, pupils gained practical experience during an internship in the London hospitality industry. 4 years after the school opened, the number of courses was expanded, and from now on, you could not only become a chef at the college, but also a qualified waiter, receptionist, or restaurant manager. Next to the Westminster Technical Institute is a large exhibition hall called the Royal Horticultural Society, and this was built in 1904 for vegetable, fruit and flower exhibitions, but all kinds of other events took place. And the Universal Food and Cookery Association regularly organised cooking competitions, which was the forerunner of the Hotel Olympia Salon Culinaire. And during his time as chef at the Howard Hotel, Iwan Kriens regularly won top honours during these cooking competitions. And he now became part of the professional jury and provided cooking demonstrations. However, during the outbreak of the First World War, culinary education came to a standstill. French chefs who taught at the hotel and restaurant school were mobilised. British teachers and pupils also left the school one by one to fight for king and country. As food became increasingly scarce in these war years, interest in healthy food increased. Iwan started teaching economical cooking without waste whilst preserving nutrients. Initially, he provided these lessons for a specific target group, and later his lessons gained a wider audience, partly due to his collaboration with the British journalist Dorothy Peel, who, on behalf of the Ministry of Food, informed the British public about healthy eating, and Iwan played a pivotal role in this. Before the war, England was largely dependent on imports in terms of food, and the act of war put immense pressure on the supply routes, and there was a threat of major food scarcity. At first, the government hoped to tackle this problem through voluntary rationing. In February 1917, a campaign was launched aimed at encouraging the population to live as economically as possible and to save on food, water, and energy. But this didn't work out, and the ministry therefore had to take other measures. The throwing of rice at wedding ceremonies became a criminal offence. The dimensions of the slices of cake served in tea shops were restricted, and in restaurants they were removed from the menus. The government eventually introduced an efficient distribution system of national rationing. Almost all food, except vegetables, were on the receipts. An important point of attention was the prevention of waste. Of course, it was to be prevented from discarding food suitable for human consumption, but also to prevent food and nutrients from being lost due to the wrong way of cooking. Good nutrition, however low, was necessary to keep the population healthy and on their feet. And in December 1915, Iwan Kriens was quoted in the Times explaining how to deal with the lack of eggs. The government advised the population to eat as few eggs as possible. And this led to some panic, as many people could hardly imagine a breakfast without fried eggs and bacon. Iwan came up with suggestions for an alternative breakfast, such as a sandwich of thinly sliced cheese as the favourite breakfast of the Netherlands. He even had more ideas on how to get more out of one egg. For example, a soft-boiled egg in which you baptise soldiers of toasted bread. This is something I hadn't realised as a kid that Iwan had actually invented. For the lucky man who had 2 eggs at his disposal, he had the recipe to prepare an omelette using the soft content of mashed potato, enough to feed 2 people. The Dutch chef also had a few suggestions for breakfast without eggs. For example, fried liver with bacon, fish, mushrooms and tomatoes. He also advised the eating of figs and plums at breakfast, the occasional piece of raw fruit for baked apples, and he gave a recipe for meatloaf, at that time, in England, still quite an unknown dish. The Victory Cookery book was authored by Dorothy Peel and Iwan Kriens, which is probably an initiative from the Ministry of Food. The title is a reference to the National Campaign for National Safety. By cutting back on food, responsible cooking, and reducing waste, citizens could also contribute to victory. This book is more than a cookbook. It contains extensive descriptions of preparation methods and ways to cut back on food, water, and energy. And it also describes the simple basics of cooking. This was not an unnecessary luxury, as many English people had no idea on how to prepare certain products. The Victory Cookery book was very well received by the public in general. After the war, the kitchens at Westminster Technical Institute's Hotel and Restaurant School filled up with students again. It took a great deal of planning and effort to renew the new students into the industry, as there was a persistent prejudice about working in hospitality, something we hear of even today. And it was not until the 1930s that the school had proved its reputation and sustainability, as it could hardly handle the increasing demand. And this was largely down to Iwan Kriens, who tirelessly insisted on the importance of healthy food and good cooking education, and who left no opportunity to talk about how fun and interesting it is to have a career in the hospitality industry. Iwan Kriens retired from Westminster in 1937. However, he remained involved in the national and international cooking competitions and demonstrations. He became an honorary chairman for the Salon Culinary, part of Hotel Olympia, and a food inspector on passenger ships. And in 1938, he traveled to Australia and was invited to create a professional 3-year cooking course in Australia, funded by the government. In England, Westminster Technical Institute's Hotel and Restaurant School was still the only state cooking school at the time. In 1940, thanks to a donation from the Australian businessman and multimillionaire William Anglis, the William Anglis Food Trade School, which is now the William Anglis Institute, was established, the Australian counterpart of Westminster College. Iwan Kriens passed away in 1957. He had always been particularly popular with his students. He continued to have followers, even completing their education. And some of his former students took the initiative to establish the Iwan Kriens Memorial Fund. The money was used to make prizes available to promising pupils at Westminster Technical Institute. Today, we still have end-of-year awards in the form of cups and trophies, and presented at our Westminster Kingsway College graduation ceremonies. And we still have the Iwan Kriens Cup today, and this cup is awarded to the Student Chef of the Year. The trophy is a silver cup that Iwan Kriens once received for his own culinary achievements. The cup is a bit damaged here and there, but no less valuable. It's the least beautiful trophy you can imagine, a very simple and noble cup, but incredibly rich in heritage of the education of the culinary arts. And that is why this is definitely the most prestigious award we present at the college, and why I have nominated my mentor's chair for the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts to Iwan Kriens. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Karin, and well done.